All right. I'm so excited to have my boo thing, Morgan, here. This is not the first time Morgan's been part of the Sovereign Society podcast, but now she's paving her own path. And she's one of my like go-to people I call on, I celebrate with, I share what I'm seeing, and then she's like, Bisha seeing it too. So Morgan is one of my soul squad members. And to have her, I was like, dude, we need to get you back on the podcast. Like now that you're solo and you're doing your own thing. So I've been spending a lot more time with Morgan in the last month or so, which has been really lovely. And we're seeing a lot of similarities that's happening in the industry. And it's been quite the journey, to say the least, of what's unfolding. But I know like it's coming up, or what's happening in the industry, of a lot of people chasing the vanities of numbers, whether it be followers, whether it be money, whether it be fame. And I've kind of lost sight of the humbleness and the selfless service and the integrity that comes when you're choosing, especially as a spiritual leader, right? I think there's been just a huge wave of spiritual teachers as the new celebrity. And I don't know, growing up around celebrities myself, I never saw, like, I always saw them as like a lack of hierarchy, even though it was very transparent of like what was going on. And now I feel like there's a new level of hierarchy happening in the spiritual community. So that's, I was not expecting to start off this conversation with that, but that's really what's been coming through. So thanks, Morgan, for being one of the integrous ones that are humble and are truly showing up as a selfless servant to humanity and to the greater mission.
Yes, girl. Thank you for having me back. There has been a lot of changes since we recorded the first time, but yeah, I feel you on that, and it's an interesting observation standpoint to watch this be happening and watch the celebrity status of just normal people who are doing what they're calling their own work. And I think that's great. I mean, there's a lot that is coming out of this that is good, and like we were saying, it's a lot of what we're understanding not to do, by observing what's happening, and we're just like, yeah, okay, cool, great, get your bag, do your thing, pave your own path. But it's beautiful for people who are actually watching this and witnessing it to just be like, yeah, no, like that's not only not for me, but it's not something that I'm going to support or subscribe to anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like we have to go around being whistleblowers for people, but I think it's important to go towards something that is more full of integrity and deeper level of sharing and selling things. And we're all selling something. We all have something to sell. We all have
Totally.
something to do. We all have something to share. But um, I'm just grateful for the opportunity to see what feels so misaligned and to make a very conscious effort to not do that, repeat it, and continue this pattern in the industry, because
Yeah,
spirituality is an industry.
100%. It's interesting too with it all, because with that awareness, there is this ability to, like, I think a lot of that has to do with like the love and light path. And in a way, there are shadows and darkness to this too. Like maybe there's people who still have a lot of unprocessed trauma around like being seen, or also like maybe they didn't have that kind of attention growing up and now they are. I know for a while, I remember there was moments where I was in that situation. And I think it's also important for us to have like that radical responsibility to speak up and to own up where we are human. But to speak up on if we were in that path once. And I mean, there's definitely times I remember where I got like really yucky and I like kind of drink that Kool-Aid. But what really helped me like get grounded was working with psychedelics, and really not only using psychedelics as a medicine and as a journey to like connect with my inner child and give her what she was needing and what she was yearning for, especially if like you didn't have a lot of that attention growing up and then you do now. It's important to also remember your humble beginnings,
Mhm.
and I think that's something that we need to really remember if
Yeah.
we're to be leadership in leadership, because everyone is in different paths, and like you said, I really appreciate you saying like we don't need to be whistleblowers, because that's huge. um and it's also important to recognize like with these patterns what not to do. So there are shadows, just as much as this is such a huge like light community where everyone's tapping into their white light and like shining brighter and all these pieces, yes, and there's also the shadows that come through so that light can shine brighter. So I think it's important to embrace the fact that if you are on this light path, like the bigger the light, the bigger the shadow as well, in that sense of what you've had to work through, and to find that duality and the polarity of it all.
Yeah. Well, and this is a both and conversation and scenario and lifestyle. This isn't your only love and light or your only dark and shadows. And that's what I'm doing with Love, Light, and Black Holes, and just really bringing acceptance to being okay with your darkness, with sharing it, with honoring it, with going there, with doing the practices that are going to be so beneficial to the darkness, and not pretending like everything is love and light. And there's so many spiritual leaders out there who exclusively talk about the light. And it's like one of the main things that I took away. There were 1,000 lessons from my psilocybin therapy experience, but one of the main things was the light doesn't need work. We don't need
Mm.
to work on the light. The light is lit. It's good. It's doing its own thing. There's rainbows and unicorns and, all of these things happening in the light. What we need to work on and what we're going to get the most from is honoring the darkness, working on the darkness, going towards it, and not making ourselves feel ashamed of what we find there or of who we actually are, because that's a whole half of us. I mean, like an entire half of us is dark. It's not just little bits and pockets here and there. And to deny ourselves of that entire half of our being, of our human experience, is a really quick way to become spiritually burnt out, become disconnected from your integrity and authenticity, and to really kind of mimic what's going on around you and what you see in the industry, because you think, oh yeah, I want to be all love and light, I want to do these things, and I don't want to have to deal with my darkness, because it is work. And I'm so sick, honestly, of hearing people say you need to do the work. Like, these phrases just get used and used and used, and then they start losing meaning, and then people start like disconnecting from the power of what is actually being said. But like, working on yourself is hard work. It takes devotion, it takes dedication, and it takes a true open mind, and like the mind of the student and the beginner, and just compassion. But so many people don't want to do that. So it's so much easier to just live in the
Bypass.
light, ignore, yeah, bypass, spiritually bypass everything. Live in the light, ignore the dark, and then just become half of a human. And it's going to catch up to you. Like, it's going to catch
Yeah.
up. Whatever that looks like and whenever that is, it's going to come out. So might as well just deal with it now.
Yeah, man. Because if not, it's going to bite you in the ass so much harder.
Yeah, and you're going to hurt people, you're going to hurt yourself. Like, these things have to come out of us. So however that looks and whatever that ends up being, like, is going to be individual. But what I've learned so much from psychedelics, from psilocybin specifically, is that, like, it's all just love anyways. Like, everything that we are is love, but we get so caught up in fear, we get so afraid of the truth, and we get so afraid to actually go towards something that really requires us to be brutally honest with ourselves, and then it just ends up being this shit show.
Ain't that the truth?
Ain't
Y-
that the motherfucking truth?
I mean, I've definitely have been there because I was taught or believed like, oh, I have to be love and light. Otherwise,
Hmm.
like, I'm not doing the work.
Yeah.
I haven't had like me being love and light is like the marker that I've been doing the work, right?
Right.
And
You get the love and light. That's
yeah,
like your,
that's the goal.
reward.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's the goal you want to reach. You want to reach that you're love and light. But I think again with that embracing your shadow, that brings back the humbleness as well.
Mhm.
Because not everyone is like high vibe all the time, and I think that's
No.
part of the toxic spirituality. Um, there are lows that happen, but with those lows, you find your strength, you find your compassion, you find like what's actually important.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when I started my first company in the spiritual industry, I was enamored with love and light. Everyone was talking about it. Everyone had it. Everyone was doing it. It was
Oh, it
this
was the
like,
buzzword for sure.
yeah, it was a
Mhm.
buzzword. And everyone's like, ooh, love and light. And I was like, oh my God, I love that. Like, how beautiful everyone's just living in this like sacred space of total acceptance and love.
Let's just say
And I was like, shit.
if you didn't end your signature on your emails with love and light, you weren't doing it right.
Yeah, exactly, dude, for sure. And then I started like discovering what shadow work actually was, and I was like, "Oh damn, like that sounds scary. I don't want to look at myself. I don't want to like admit that there are these things about myself that I have to accept and bring outward. Like they're just hiding within me." And then, I mean, mushrooms are just the fucking jam. And you just see all these things, and it's so objective. And I was able to, I guess the best word would be is confront and meet these
Yep.
parts of myself that I had been conveniently hiding from for so long. And then I'm like, okay, this is not actually scary. Now that I'm here, now that I'm facing you, now that I'm seeing your pain and understanding that I gave you this personality, I gave you this archetype, I gave you all of this because you are me, and I'm talking to my shadow here. Then I was like, girl, I see you. Like, this isn't scary at all. I understand exactly your why
Mhm.
because it's
And
mine
what they she
too.
needed was love, right?
Yes. And to be
Yeah.
seen and to be
Hmm.
accepted and to be invited to the table and to not be shoved in the closet and be like, don't
Yep.
look over there, like the shadow's hiding.
Well, it's a fun fact. Here's a fun fact, y'all. The first time I actually ever met Morgan in person was in Joshua Tree, and it was before I was living here. And we decided to go camping, and we like ate mushrooms, and we
Mm-hmm.
saw like a UFO. Remember that?
Yes, I do.
And it's like it wasn't because we were tripping, like we really saw it.
No,
Like it was
really.
just like going so slow. We're like, oh my God, that's not a shooting star.
Uh-uh.
And at that moment, I knew like, oh, I'm to move to Joshua Tree. Like
Yeah.
that's where I knew I was like, oh, because I was like so in limbo. I was still living. I moved back in with my parents, like still enamored in the love and light and the infiltration of false light. And something was like, oh, you got to move back to Joshua Tree. So like, I think it was around this time, almost like in
It was
March. Yeah,
March. Yeah.
yeah, and and then like I started looking at houses in April and moved in July. But with that experience, psilocybin helped me understand that like if I was going to really reach and embody sovereign embodiment,
Mm-hmm.
I was going to have to continue to work through the shadows. So I was brought back to a place that to do my Saturn return. To that was like my childhood home is literally the midway point between my house and my parents' house. So it's like I'm looking above my childhood,
Mm-hmm.
where I'm because I'm in higher elevation, of doing that deeper work that I can start to recognize my shadow and like
Yeah.
come from that light and recognize my shadow down there. And while I feel like my time here is coming to completion, even though I did that mushroom journey like 4 years ago, it's still working through me to identify my shadow and to embrace my
Mm-hmm.
shadow. So I love how you've been sharing that psychedelic therapy has really helped identify your shadow
Yeah,
and the
so
importance of that.
it's so cool. It was so cool. Like I was in ceremony very recently, and I was like, I'm picturing my shadow as this dark, sludgy, heavy, sticky, dense substance. It was a substance. And I was like, what is happening here? Like, how do I see myself in this. And my therapist was like, well, what's underneath all of this substance? And I just saw like my little girl, my knees were up to my chest like this, just in absolute protection mode, like self protection, self love, just scared, such, so scared. And then I was like, girl, like, what are you doing down here? And my shadow was like, no one wants me. Like, I don't know where else to go. And I was like, oh, honey, like, mijita, come here. Let's just talk about it. Let me, like, I gave her this entire archetype. She has like a bone necklace on. She lives in the jungle and she has like, streaks of mud here. Her hair's all wild. She has these shoulder pads that are spikes, kind of like a Sonic the Hedgehog. She's just like this spiky protected. She has a spear. And I like once I identified her and gave her this like sacred gown, basically, like clothing, she was like, ooh, this feels so good. And then I understood her so much better because I could see her. It was tangible. It wasn't just this like vast darkness that you can't really comprehend and there's no like quantifiable piece of it. It's just like expansive. And so when I distilled all of that sludge down into this little human and gave her this like rad fucking warrior outfit, she was like, "Oh, this feels good." And then I was like, "Girl, I understand you completely now."
Her
And
wild
since then,
child.
she's a wild child, the wild
Yeah.
one. That's what I was calling her in my head, the wild one. And once I did that, everything distilled down. All of this confusion about my shadow, about my pain, about my trauma, about my childhood, about everything that's ever happened to me was in this sludge. And now it's in this little human who looks like a fucking badass and who I'm so proud
Hell
of.
yeah.
Hell yeah, I am so
Embrace
proud of
that.
my
Yeah.
shadow and everything that she's gone through and everything that she's endured and everything that she's made me become or helped me become. And once I realized this, it was freedom, it was acceptance,
Mm.
it was like like all fear dissolved, and it was just this absolute love. And like I set a place at my table for her. She came and sat down. We all had like all of the people inside of me. We all had this beautiful like conversation. She was like, I've always just wanted to be invited. And
Mm.
that's it. And I was like, shit, girl, well then like standing invite for the rest of time. I want you here. I want you here. I want you here. And so many people, and I have talked about this a lot too, is like turning shadows into light. But what I realized is like, maybe that's not what is best. Maybe we just need to accept that the shadow is there and let it live and give it
Hmm.
permission to be and not try to change it.
Yes, you were just saying what was in my head. I recently heard, I was like on a live, that if you love something, let it be.
Yeah,
And so instead of trying to continue to like, we have to start loving our shadows. Otherwise it has like power over us.
right.
And it's still parts of who we are, again, because I think to continue to come back to it, or to not even come back to it, but to recognize it, that's where we can start. I mean, there's still duality and polarity, right? We have
Sure.
light and dark, masculine, feminine within each of us. And I like it, like for instance, there's no accident why the feminine is often represents the dark,
Hmm.
because there's more of that compassion, right? Like
Yeah.
when you see darkness in the world, of course there can be anger, but there can be like a sacred rage to that, that inspires you and empowers you to do something about it. But deeper than that, it's a level of compassion and empathy. And I think that's what we need to embrace more of.
Yeah.
And I think it's okay. Now we're in a society of social media, which is still like relatively new, even though it feels exhausting and like outplayed. But when we look to like the overall evolution of humanity, we're having to learn how to adapt to these situations.
Hmm.
So I think it's important, if you are a spiritual teacher at that specifically, that it's okay to share. Yes, it's important to inspire and to um, help your clients like go to the next level and show them what's possible. But it's also important to let them know that they're seen, just like you would like you're the wounded child within, or just like you would, um, you know, just that shadow. It's
Hmm.
seen and it's honored and it's recognized. And with that, we just have to continue to practice that discernment and to really share it with love, and that's what I'm calling in and I'm craving to see more in this industry is like the integrity of, remembering where you came from
Mm.
and honoring the humble beginnings.
Yeah.
That's something that like I said, like earlier, what not to do. Like I've seen what not to do. And of course, like celebrate your wins, go for it.
Oh yeah.
But also it's important to let people know that may not be like where you are specifically on their journey, that it's okay with where you are. Like
Hmm.
I live by the mantra, honor the journey, trust the process. And the truth is that your lessons are your legacy, right? Like what
Yeah.
you've learned through those challenges, through those failures, through those moments of defeat, those moments of when you wanted to give up, when you were at your low, how you got through it and to the other side, that's how we're here to really be of service and to share from that the storytelling, because I think that's a huge part of what this modern society has been missing.
Hmm.
That so much of our ancient, our ancestors and the ancient cultures would sit around the fire and share and their integration of their stories, of their journeys. And so that's what I'm really praying for more of in our industry so that we can remember what it is to be human.
Yeah. Well, there's so many lessons in rage. Like
Hmm.
everybody thinks that they have to be happy all the time, that they can't be mad, that they can't let this out. And I lived by that idea for so long. I seriously thought that it was better to never be mad, to be a people pleaser, and to never release this rage that was within me. And I just had this cloak on of like, I'm super chill, like I'm high all the time, like nothing bothers me, all love and light, good vibes only. But as I've
Good
gotten
vibes only.
older,
Lol.
yeah, as I've gotten older and as I've been like super fucking angry about some shit, I realize that letting that out is so important. And I ask my clients two questions: how do you release your rage? And are you masturbating? And I think they're perplexed by both and like, oh shit, like, how do I release my rage? And like, no, I'm not masturbating. And I'm like, honey, let's do it. Like, tomorrow, I am going to a place called Smash It. It's like a break room. You get like
Oh my God, I've
sledgehammers.
always wanted to do one of those.
Oh, it is going down. So things like that, that you're just like unapologetic about. And like, you have to get this out of your body. The body stores so much. Sure, the mind also does. We have memories, we have all of these things, emotions, and they all come from all of these places. But this is also stored in the body. And traditional Chinese medicine has taught us for thousands of years that the physical manifestation of disease is from things that we don't release. And so
Hmm.
having this rage within us for so, so long and this darkness that we just ignore, it will turn into something. And that something could be life threatening. So it's
Been
best
there.
to get it out now. It's best to say, I'm mad, or like just speak your fucking truth and stop trying to pussyfoot around and save
Yep.
everybody else's emotions in lieu of your own. I mean, I'm just like, I'm over it. I'm not here for it. I don't have the energy, honestly, to pretend like everything's okay when it's not. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm not okay. And I'm not going to answer a plain, like, how are you? Good. I'm not. I'm
Well,
not
I
doing
think that's been part of the toxicity in the community is when you have those feelings, where do you go to without feeling shame?
that. Yeah.
Right? Because so much of the complex of love and light, good vibes only, you got to be like on this like image of your brand of
Mhm.
like looking, like whatever. When you have those moments, where can people go that like without feeling ashamed, like when you're in those
Right.
moments?
I
That's
mean,
why I
I go
think
to
the humbleness,
kickboxing.
that's where I think the humbleness really comes through, right?
Mhm.
Like if you can be humble to that, and of course, like knowing the boundary, of course,
Yeah.
of like, "Oh, I can't take this on all the time," but with that humbleness, maybe directing people to the places that they need to go. Or even sharing the highs and the lows, I think is really beneficial, because they're inevitable.
Yeah. Well, and it's going to happen. Yeah, it's going to happen to everybody. And when we're only talking about love and light, and all of our, squares on our Instagram are all about like our highlight reel and all of these beautiful things that are happening to us and all of our wins, but we fail to talk about or neglect really to talk about the bad things that happen or the bad feelings we have or like the setbacks or whatever it may be, the stress that night that you couldn't sleep because you're in so much anxiety about something. Like
Yeah.
talking about that, just talking about it is so healing. And for so long I denied my experience in India. I survived a terrorist attack in 2008. I got Reiki after a lot of other things that I tried to get back to myself. And then I was like, you know what? I'm good. Like I was 22. I was like, I don't want to deal with this right now. But like denying that for so long made it grow. And then at the 10-year anniversary, I lost my shit. And I was like, wow, I have done zero work on this and I have done nothing to help myself. And I've been pretending like everything's okay. And then I started talking about it. And when my book was released, I was on a bunch of podcasts for interviews and stuff. And they would ask me when my spiritual journey started. And I was like, fuck, I guess we're going there. And I guess I have to talk about India.
Mm.
And now that I have for the past year or like 8 months, whatever, it's been so freedom. It's given me so much permission to admit that I'm not okay about it still, that hearing loud noises still makes me cringe and my entire body goes into a trauma response and I feel like I'm not safe at all. And just acknowledging that in itself has been so healing. And then doing therapy with psilocybin to address that even more has been amazing. And it's like I got to this place where I was like, how in the fuck have I let myself get away with this for so long?
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about embracing your PTSD,
Yeah.
and also creating an outlet to express it. Because trust me, that's what my book is all about. And I've had so much resistance in editing it because I'm like having to like not necessarily open up those wounds again, but like revisit it. I'm like,
Mhm.
whew, and so I know for me, my intention is to disconnect really the rest of Pisces season so I can finish editing it. And so that when spring comes with the Aries season, like that with that sun shining, like
Yeah.
it's done and it's processed. But again, I'm just really grateful we're living in a time where mental health is being talked about.
Yeah.
Because we grew up with a lot of shame. Like I know I was the first in my family to go to therapy. I mean, shit, if I lived in Denver, I'd be doing psychedelic therapy too. Like I'm so jealous of you, but I do it in my own way. But of course
Yeah.
it supports when you have that therapist and like
The
all,
facilitator is huge.
yeah, all I know is like, like I have a whole chapter in my book about, well, a whole section, I should say, when I had my difficult LSD trip and the PTSD there, but I talked about the importance of set and setting. Like I have like a whole
Yeah.
like grayed out area, like, all right, let's talk about set and setting. Because again, I think when we have these experiences, we need to also teach from what we've learned.
Yeah.
And what's been really great is that I'm just really grateful that there's been spaces like Clubhouse that I've been really connecting with people that I feel safe to share like what I saw during that time between that difficult LSD trip and when I got struck by lightning and even after, and recognizing the infiltrations that came through or were trying to come through because they were attacking me at my most vulnerable space.
Yeah.
And so I think when we continue to bypass it, that's where we give like the door open to these darker entities that
Oh
know
yeah.
like your weak spots. And that's where they'll like, it's like putting your finger in that open wound, right? Like that's what
Well,
they
and you're
do.
just open, like you're in pain, so you're like raw.
Yeah, and that's what really like was a lot of my early spiritual journey when I first came on, and then I got infiltrated by a lot of this false light and these teachings that
Uh,
kept me in consciousness traps and loops. But again, so this is me sharing my story, embracing that, and I think one of the more healing pieces of processing this is through writing, you
Yes.
know, and giving yourself a space, a safe space to have an outlet. Maybe it is through like smashing a whole bunch of shit in a room. Maybe it is by like writing a book. Maybe it is by like creating a whole podcast, like speaking about it, talking about it. But I think if we're going to really accelerate and ascend as a humanity and as a collective, we need to embrace this shadow, and we need to not have shame around it, and be able to be in containers and spaces that it feels safe for us to express it, where we actually feel seen and where we feel heard and where we feel honored. And that's what I'm praying to see more of in the spiritual community, especially more with like these higher earning coaches and mentors as well. I really pray that still that is not just like bypass of like, or just like a little, um, oh, like let's like brush over, because as you continue to accelerate to higher levels as well, like you weren't expecting that story to arise, but it did.
And it
Um,
had to.
and it had to. And so that's the
Yeah.
thing, is you continue to accelerate, you're going to be faced with things that you probably unconsciously bypassed and like put on the back burner, or you're consciously spiritually bypassing.
Super consciously
Yeah.
bypassed all of that shit for a decade. I'm
Cuz
like,
you
no, no, no,
yeah,
no.
cuz you're like, I don't have time for this. This is
Well,
not
and I was
looking
like,
great.
I'm good. Like I told myself the story that I was good. I got Reiki once. I felt like myself the next morning, and then I was like, done.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my God, that
But I was
happened to me.
22. Like, you don't know shit at 22. You think you know everything, but you
Whew.
don't know anything.
Wait till you hear wait till you read my book where I talk all about that. Like I literally thought, like after I had that difficult LSD trip, and my best friend came through on that LSD trip. It was like the 10-year anniversary of her death, and or the 5-year anniversary of her death, and she came through, and I was seeing a lot of the infiltration happening in the music industry as well. And I was like, oh, I'm fine, I'm great, I'm ready to go. And I was like, bish, you have a lot of like, I mean, there's still work to do, right? Like there's a
There's
lot.
never not going to be work to do.
Yeah, yeah.
There's never going to be a time where you're on your mountaintop and you're like, ah, maybe not even at death. Maybe you come back with the same lessons to learn because you didn't address them. Like, we have to normalize not ever being on the mountaintop and continuously being on this journey that is going to fuel us so much more than the arrival of having everything figured out, because you don't have everything figured out and nobody does. And if anybody does tell you that they have everything figured out, fucking run, because
Let's just say
like
it's Miley
they're
Cyrus, The
gurus.
Climb. I'm just hearing Miley Cyrus, The Climb. It's a journey, but and that's
It's
the other,
a
what
journey.
you just said is so important that I think we need to talk about, because this has been a huge issue I've seen, especially as a Kundalini yogi, is that there's like a guru complex
Be the
that,
guru, be your own
yeah,
fucking guru. Like,
you
I
are the
cannot
guru, you are the
handle.
guru you've been waiting for. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you're continuously giving your power away, and you're
It's like
not in your sovereign embodiment.
yeah, and you might as well be like subscribing to a religion with the kind of externalization of power that happens with a guru.
Well, there's unfortunately a lot of the spirituality, like spirituality in itself has become like in a religion in a way of like a cult.
Yeah.
There's a cult mindset to it of like, oh, if I'm not doing this right, then like I'm going to be off track. Like, oh my God, I didn't meditate today. Like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
setting myself up for disaster. And that, where's the liberation in that? Where's the sovereignty in that?
And where's
Um,
the individuality to do whatever is best for you rather than some subscription that some dude that you've never, or woman, whoever, that you've never met, who doesn't know you in your personal journey, is like, this is the way to enlightenment. Well,
yeah.
like, there's no one size blanket for everything. You can't just tell everybody to do one thing. And like, it's like with veganism, it's with spirituality, it's with everything. People say you have to do this in order to be that. But it's like, if that doesn't work for me, then I'm truly just harming myself. I'm taking myself away from my own sovereignty and power and understanding of my own needs, giving that power to someone else to tell me that they know what's best for me, and stepping into this space of further confusion and just like fuckery. And then you get in, like you were saying, especially with um Course in Miracles, like you get stuck in these loops and cycles that you're always going to be dependent upon this resource, whether it be a person or a book or a meditation series, like whatever the fuck ever. It's
That
just like,
that one,
I'm just
that
gonna be
one,
a
that
rule
one.
breaker always.
Yeah, that one, that was the one that like probably the most painful.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, Marianne Williamson told me personally when I was at my rock bottom, like read A Return to Love and then dive into A Course in Miracles. And I did. And I remember like I saw like an owl outside. I was at like the Center for Spiritual Living. I was at my rock bottom. I was still living in San Diego, but knew I needed to move back home. And I started A Course in Miracles and I was a devotee. Well, like the epitome of a devotee. Like brought that book everywhere with me every day, jumped into the lesson of the day. I read that book twice, cover to cover, and it's like a 1,700 page book.
I mean, it's like it offered you something. It helped you get to where you are now, but
Yeah.
it's that
But it
unwavering
was a loop.
devotion to it. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's like you don't question it because it is the way, right? It's
Right.
the way. So you don't ever question. You don't, like, you're not encouraged to think for yourself. You're just encouraged to follow direction. And that's good. It works for a time. It helps you get out of something that may have been painful or traumatic or holding you back. But there's also an expiration date, and you graduate and you go to the next thing, and you can't always be in middle school or in high school or in college. Like, there has to be a time where you're like, got it. Like, got the lesson, got the
Mhm.
degree, got the certification, got what I needed. And now it's time for me to go somewhere different
And move forward.
and
Yeah.
move forward and honor,
Hmm.
like, thank you for what you gave me, but also, like, I want to do this on my own. And not that we're never going to need help, and like I don't seek help ever. Like, I seek help all the time. I'm in therapy right now. But it's just this idea of dependency, that we can't do it on our own and that we're always going to need something. But it's like your car mechanic, and they're like, I hope I never see you again because this problem is fixed. Like, the idea isn't to always go in to get your car fixed for this one problem. It's like, it's fixed, I hope I never see you, this should work for the rest of time, rather than this dependency, and having coaches and leaders and whatever be like, you're going to need me forever, so here's our like $50,000 package of working together. And I'm like, bitch, please.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what we have to remember. That was a really beautiful share, Morgan, because uh that is a way that you're constantly giving your power. And I did that to a book that was written by two people, two philosophers who are part of the MK Ultra mind control experiment that was using LSD to manipulate a mind control. So of course I was already in that mindset.
Mhm.
I talk all about it in my upcoming book, Alignment is the True Hustle. But even being able to say that out loud now, I was fucking terrified to speak up about it for a long time because I was still operating from my trauma.
Right.
Um, and that was the thing. Like I kept putting it to the side because it wasn't love and light. And that caused more toxicity.
Mhm.
And so I've had to learn just to pave my own path and to, like you said, take what resonates, release the rest, and infuse that into my work and my business, because now I've had to deprogram myself essentially from everything I was taught about business and start to take what resonated, release the rest, and pave my own path. You know, I had a client that's in Alchemize Your Systems that when we haven't even started, she's already realizing like, holy shit, I was always trying to like be like so and so or be like them, when I realized it wasn't working out because I just need to be like me.
Yeah.
Right. Like I just need, and that's the thing. We need to just be like ourselves. So with what we've learned through the various journeys, the teachings, the certifications, the programs, the courses, the experiences, how can you start to quiet the noise, slow down, go within, and pave your own path? Which is why I think social media sabbaticals and taking time away and like,
Or just like regular boundaries. Like, you don't even
yes,
have to like leave social media for a month. Just like have boundaries around it and set times. Like I have an iPhone, so it allows you to set certain time limits on apps. And so I have a time limit on Instagram
Do you
daily.
follow it?
Sometimes.
I don't.
There
I
are some days when
don't.
I'm like doing shit, or like I've just done an hour-long Instagram live, or like recorded something or been doing something that like then I'm like, okay, I haven't actually spent this much time like scrolling.
Yeah.
But there are times when I'm not in my power and I'm not standing in like my boundary zone that I'm like,
Hmm.
nope, ignore time limit. But for the most part, I don't even hit it. Like my notification rarely even pops up. And so just recognizing these patterns in yourself and like being okay with that and admitting it rather than just brushing it off to the side and again like always bypassing. But I think what, and I mean just coming back to psychedelics, like I think what psychedelics do is like it shows you that there's a whole different world out of this little tiny bubble that we live in and that we've created. And it's like, I just think about it being like in high school
Hmm.
and something happens, someone breaks up with you, some friend is mad at you, the prom is coming up, like all of this shit. You think it's your entire world. Do you think that this bubble is like everything? And your parents are like, how ridiculous. You're really this upset about something. But it's like, yes, like that is valid, but it's also important to have a different perspective and to travel and to go within the mind and to explore your inner and outer world so that you realize that this isn't everything. What you see on social media is a fraction of what's actually happening in the world and in these people's lives who we're following. So it's like we have to zoom out, we have to go within, and we have to realize that this is just all bullshit. Like we're sure we're playing the game and like the majority of my business is from social media, but at the same time like
And your friendship.
and my yeah. Yeah, how many people have I met through social media?
Yeah,
So many.
totally.
Like
We
I love it.
met. We met through
Yeah.
social media. I was just
Yep.
doing the math in my head. I was like, I've been friends with Morgan for like 5 years
4
now.
years, yeah.
Longer than that. Like, because we were
Oh,
chatting
because it was
before.
before, yeah.
Yeah, we've been friends for like 5 years now.
And
And
I just slid into your DMs.
I know, hey babe, I
But it's
swiped
like we
left.
get so caught up, and there's so much good that comes from social media, but it has to be with boundaries. It has to be seen for what it is and not put all of our eggs in this basket and think that this is the real world. Like do some drugs. Change your perspective and realize your worth outside of these applications.
Well,
Clubhouse included.
yeah, totally. I mean, for me, psychedelics saved my life. And I know down the line, even when I have like buku bucks, my intention is to continue to give back to psychedelic research and therapy. So it's just like, I just, it makes me so happy to see that it's supporting you because that's like my passion for it. And in my book, it's a lot about psychedelics in there because I've had life-changing experiences with ayahuasca and peyote and psilocybin and sassafras and cannabis and LSD and MDMA. Like I talk about all of it
Yeah.
because I don't want to hold back on what helped me
Hmm.
become who I am today and heal, and also talk about the shadow of it, of how I became addicted
Right.
to MDMA and pieces like that as well. But we've got to talk about it. And, just like when we work with these medicines, because I see them more as medicines than drugs if you have it with the right intention.
Right.
Um, we create a ceremony with that, and I like to say ceremony more than like a ritual, but we create these ceremonies in these intentional spaces,
Mhm.
um that why we're diving in, do we have the support, how can we make sure that we're in a safe container, that the setting is set right, and that we feel held. So I'm like, I love that a huge piece of what you're doing now is embracing that witchy side of you as well. And now you're helping people understand what it means to really ritualize your business in that sense as well. Because just like a plant medicine ceremony, your business needs to have the proper set and setting as
Yeah.
well. I mean, that's why I created Alchemize Your Systems, is because I want people to have a really safe set and setting to unleash their medicine. And
Mhm.
so I know you've been really creating and focusing on your new program, Ritualize Your Business. So I would love to hear more about that and the driving force behind that as well.
I think the driving force was I just got to this point where when I was like, before I started my first company, I was working for other people. There was no ritual. I was doing what I was told. I was, writing copy, making marketing plans and strategies, and doing all of this stuff that was outside of my spirituality. And when I started my first company, which was innately spiritual, I realized that like these can intersect. And in fact, it's so much better when they do. And once I gave myself permission to not have to feel like I had to work the 9 to 5 and to flow with my energy and to be okay working like from 10 to midnight real hard or like from 6 to midnight, I realized that there was so much freedom and so much potential in doing things that are best for you and ritualizing your business, because your business is an extension of you. It's what you're here to share, it's what you're here to do. And like the personal development that we apply to ourselves is exactly the personal development that we need to apply to our businesses. And see things like doing shadow work in business, for example, is the first section or the first whatever step in ritualize your business, because we have to start there. We have to look at what's not working. We have to give ourselves permission to be like, I'm done doing this. I'm done sending these emails. I'm done putting this pressure on myself, thinking that I have to do all of this stuff. And like systems are definitely part of that. If you're not even looking at your systems or not aware of them, that's a huge shadow aspect to move into. And then just like planning things by the moon and flowing with the seasons and living within these cyclical events and flowing with my menstrual cycle. And like this past week, I was recording all week because I'm ovulating and I scheduled that intentionally. And next week, when I'm menstruating, I've blocked 3 days off of my schedule. No clients, no obligations, nothing, because I've gotten to the point where I'm like, I'm not fucking working while I'm bleeding because I don't want to. I don't want to push myself into this masculine performance idea that I have to always be hustling when I'm like on the floor in cramps or just like space cadet head, you know? I mean, it's not even like I'm in pain all the time, but it's like I just have
You want to do
chosen,
you.
yeah, I've chosen to not push myself through this incredibly vulnerable and raw time to perform or to be creative or to help others do something.
Hmm.
Like with my clients, like I can't be here for you. I just need to conserve all my energy to be here for me. And then of course, my favorite part of ritualize your business is sex magic and really getting in tune with your pleasure and your arousal and what makes you feel good, and then like manifesting, and sales goals become easier, attracting clients becomes easier, getting opportunities just becomes effortless. And it's this entire like embodiment that everything in business can be ritualized. And it doesn't even matter if your business isn't spiritual, it's just applying this intention and this devotion to expressing yourself through your business in these ways that are connected to your inner and outer worlds.
Hell yeah. I mean, that's how we can like start to really run our business smarter
Yeah.
too. That's why like when I created Alchemize Your Systems, it was important to help people with the groundwork. Cause like you said, like if there's so much of that work, 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 go, 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 or if there's an avoidance
Mm-hmm.
of like the develop of the foundation setting, then to me it's parallel to within yourself. Where do you have areas of your own inner divine masculine that you've been avoiding,
Right.
or bypassing, and pieces like that? Where's that safety in that structure, and those
Mm-hmm.
pieces like that? And I think we need to recognize that, so that creative expression of who we are and that feminine essence of us
Mm-hmm.
can flow freely and make an impact and be humble
Mm-hmm.
and intentional and just really connecting.
And the masculine is so important. Everyone is like, fuck patriarchy, fuck
I know, I
masculinity. And
know.
it's like, no, like, yes, but also like, no, like, we
Well, then
need both. We
we
have to
swing the
have both.
pendulum too
Right.
far to the other side. And that's something that I noticed, and why I created Alchemize Your Systems was like, I knew like the spiritual community has gone so goddessy. And I mean, hello, my
Yeah.
podcast was a Sovereign Goddess podcast. I like, again, I'm taking responsibility for that, but it's gotten so strong with like the feminine. And of course, it's
Yeah.
beautiful seeing the rise of the feminine, but we can't ignore the men. And that's what ayahuasca told me. My last thing, the first time I ever did ayahuasca, she said to me, the grandmother told me, don't forget the men.
Yeah, you
And
can't
that's when
forget
I
the
changed. And
men.
that's when I changed from the Sovereign Goddess podcast, the Sovereign Society podcast. That's when I knew I needed to be more inclusive, be open to trans, men, non binary, whatever group of people that want to come through and receive this medicine. Otherwise, I'm not being of full service to humanity. And of course, like I know there's a lot of women or whatever groups that like to niche down and like talk to their ideal client. And maybe your ideal client is specifically women, but we can't ignore the men because we're also ignoring the male aspects of within ourselves as
Yeah,
well. Um,
absolutely.
and so
And the
those are the
feminine
things we
is
need to
formless.
recognize.
The feminine is formless without the structure of the masculine. And that applies to yourself, to your business, to everything. We have to embrace the masculine in all of it, and recognize that yes, there has been toxic masculinity for thousands of years, but that doesn't mean that we eradicate men and only become goddesses and only speak to women and only create things for women. And sure, if your ideal client is specifically a woman, that's great, but like all of these women are rising up and we're becoming more powerful, becoming more heard, we're becoming empowered in business, in life, in the political sphere. Like we are more available than we ever have been. We're more identified than we ever have been. But at the same time, like who's helping all of these men keep up with these women? And all of these men
Because
are
then they're
just
not
going
going
to
to be there
be
for you if that's what you're into.
no.
Like, then
And they're
you're
just
not
going
going
to
to
be
have strong men
distilled.
for you, you know?
No, they're going to be distilled down to little boys and feel like they're not heard, they're not seen, they're not
Yeah.
needed.
Like, what
And
do
I
these
don't think
these
that's good
these
either.
these little boys, like, how do you think they feel if they're not feeling and seeing that empowerment or
Hmm.
that space? I love seeing the rise of like men's group and men feeling comfortable of like expressing emotion and pieces
Yeah.
like that. But the phrase that always made me cringe was the future is female.
Yeah.
The future to me is all inclusive, and that's what we have to remember, and find that inclusivity within ourselves of our own inner masculine, of our own inner feminine, find that inclusivity within ourselves of our light and our shadow.
Right.
We need to be in sovereign embodiment and to really be in that whole space. It's about transcending the love and light. It's about transcending the stigmas and conditions, and to just recognize like what deep within, what is your truth where you are embodied.
Yeah. Yeah.
What
It's
is your truth
acceptance
when
of
you are
all.
whole? Exactly.
It's acceptance of all. And what I said after therapy the other day, it was like, ooh, I feel like a new person. And I was like, no, I feel like a whole person. And I was like,
Ooh,
ooh.
yes.
Like I haven't felt
Yes.
that before. I haven't felt so much acceptance of everything and just being like cool with it, you know?
I love that. Well,
It
I
was a
mean,
huge shift.
it's been incredible, Morgan, to like see your evolution. And I've just been like seeing like insights, like talking of when we were last on this podcast. Cause it's like one of my most listened to episodes. And just like I remember, I just felt like then like your voice just kind of felt like held back or silenced
Mhm.
or like brushed aside a bit. And now i
Well,
can
there were a
i
lot of
can
reasons for
see
that.
I can see but I can see now you're like truly embodied in who Morgan is. And it's just been like, as a friend, it's just been so beautiful to witness. And I'm so proud of you. And I'm so looking forward to seeing how this journey continues to unfold. The more and more you step into that sovereign embodiment as you continue to ascend and accelerate, and really just like unapologetically be you. So share with us when Ritualize Your Business begins.
That will begin. I want to say it's mid-March. Let me look at my Let me look at my calendar. Ritualize Your Business will be available for sign up, and it's going to just be an ongoing course available all the time, March 22nd. So once it's released, it's going to be running. So this isn't like a live course that only
Mm-hmm.
happens during these times. It's something that I am putting into my like permanent offerings as long as I feel aligned with it. And that will be available for always. And it's going to include my Tap That Astro course, which is my 7-day EFT and astrology tapping course to align
That's such a good
with
name. Damn, look at
the.
that branding. That's so good.
Oh,
Tap that
thank
Astro.
you. I thought I was hilarious. I thought it was a
Dude,
date. I was
that's
like, this
next
is
level. I
hilarious.
live for that shit. That's why I love branding. I love when people get super witty and like, oh, that's like what I live for. Like the old stoner Sabrina would be like, hell yeah, that's such a great idea. But like, I live
Yeah.
for it.
Some people were like, some people might not get it or like might be offended. And I'm like, then those aren't my people and they shouldn't take my course.
Hell yeah. I love it, Morgan. Well, thank you for going there with me and really just spilling the tea with me and
Yeah.
being you. Morgan honestly is one of like the most loyal people I know. And like I call her when I have something to celebrate. I call her when like I'm challenged, but like this is someone who she's accomplished so much. Like her book, she wrote a book, Soul Magic. And she's really like, she's my people, right? We're
Yeah,
bridging the
girl.
gap between the ancient wisdom and
Mhm,
the modern medicine. And
mhm.
I think that's what modern mysticism is really all about. And I'm very optimistic for what's to come as we continue to have more conversations like this where we can let people know that they're totally safe and have total permission to express what they're feeling and um, to embrace what they're feeling and that there's not something wrong with them. And to also feel okay to ask for that help and support and
Mhm.
reach out if you need to get therapy. If you're feeling stuck, like hire that coach,
Yeah.
but just knowing that the lone wolf days are over and you're not here to be living in that constant suffering. You have the ability to transcend and you have the ability to, from that experience, which you've gotten through the other side, to share with the world your wisdom and your medicine and your story. Just so that we can, again, bring more humanity and the
Yeah.
humanness back into our communities rather than having to meet up a certain image that we feel like we need to portray in order to be accepted and seen. So
Right.
I love you, Morgan.
I love you.
Thanks for being someone who's practicing what you preach. And I love you. You're the best.
I love you. Happy to do it. Happy to be here. Thank you for seeing me. And thank you for always supporting me.
I love you. And everyone, go check out Ritualize Your Business, check out Soul Magic, and let us know what you think about this episode. We'd love to connect with you. And just know that better days are ahead and they're here now.
Yes.
The best is yet to come. So just continue to honor what you need, fill up your cup, ask for help, and trust this process that we're all in. So we love
Yeah.
you. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll be seeing you soon. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.